So today I got a great question from our friend Gene.Lay. He goes on to say, Yo Elliot, we as men get caught up in doing our duties, work, solving problems, saving money, and providing for our families, and can easily neglect ourselves, he says. I have found myself in a self-care rut. Not going to the gym, not doing the things I enjoy anymore. Any words on this unavoidable fact of a man's life? So thank you for your question, Gene.Lay. And so the very first thing I would say is that I totally understand where you're coming from, because I used to believe that life was about feeling good, being happy, achieving all of my hopes, dreams, fancies. But what I've discovered is that none of that is true. In fact, I've discovered that the truth about life for a man is that it is suffering and sacrifice. Now, don't get me wrong, I understand we've all been conditioned to look for love, look for pleasure, look for happiness. And we see it all around us with people who are so-called happy. You scroll through the gram and you see people with all their wonderful lives. It seems like everybody's happy, so I need to pursue that happiness also. You see the people on the TV commercials, hear the guys in the rap songs, you see people on TV. It just seems like everybody's fucking happy except me, right? I need to pursue it, the pursuit of happiness, right? Isn't that what America's all about? The pursuit of happiness. But I've tried that, and I gotta tell you, it's fruitless. Not once have I achieved something and actually had happiness. I've achieved a whole lot of things that I thought was going to make me happy. But when I get there, I realize I'm not happy. Now, maybe it's just me, but I've heard that this is the case with a lot of people who become quote-unquote successful in their lives. You struggle, you strive, you fight, you do what you got to do in order to get that goal. And when you get that goody-goody at the end, you realize this ain't what I thought it was. It ain't all what it's cracked up to be. It's not as exciting or as pleasurable as I thought it was going to be. And you know what most dudes do then? They pursue the next one. And then keep pursuing, and then ending up each time realizing that this is an empty pursuit. So I no longer believe that chasing happiness is the point in life. Doing things that I like, that make me feel good, are not the point in life at all. Like I said earlier, I'm starting to believe, really beginning to understand that our purpose, our means, the end for man is suffer and sacrifice. We are to be a sacrifice in the same way that Jesus Christ was a sacrifice, the example of the perfect man. They even say Jesus is king, and I tell you, when you start studying the work of Robert Moore, who talks about the inner king, he wrote the book King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, you begin to understand through his words that there are no such thing as a king without a sacrifice. Wherever there's a king, there's a sacrifice. And that's because what does the king do? The king draws down the blessings from above and distributes it in his world. But in order to do that, he has to give himself up. It can't be his will, because it's always the blessings. All blessings come from above. All good things that happen on earth, all good things that we get, come from above. But there's a conduit, and I believe every single man is a king if he allows himself to be a conduit. So that once it's received, once your path is received or revealed to you, I'll talk to you about that in a moment, then all potential for any fantasy, any quote-unquote happiness collapses into reality.
There's a lot of questions here
Pure
from
potential
multiple different
collapses
people
into reality
about themselves or friends of theirs going through bouts of depression. And the questions usually revolve around, what do I do to help myself in this state of depression? What do I do to help this friend who's in a state of depression? And also, Elliot, it seems as if you go through bouts of depression as well, which I'm always transparent with you guys about. How is it that you seem to move out of it so quickly and then almost seem to be stronger on the other end? A few people are asking this. Now, before I get started, let's make a clarification about what I'm describing when I talk about depression. Because there are some people who, it may sound controversial when I say what I'm about to say, that have adopted the pharmaceutical and medical industry's definition of depression being something that is a lifelong holding that someone carries with them and they are now medically ill because of it. And they get to take all types of medication for many, many years. And, they live with this personal identification with what should be a season in life. Depression is normal. It's normal to go through these bouts or these seasons where there is chaos and there's entropy, there's frustration, there's confusion, there's craziness in your life. It's happening intrinsically and extrinsically. You can personally identify with the circumstances and the feelings associated with that bout of depression and stay in it forever if you'd like, which will chemically change your body. You will change. You're right. Yes, there's a chemical imbalance. And you will probably now have to take medication to balance that out, especially if you don't deal with it holistically, recognizing the integratedness of the universe, yourself, your nervous system, your thoughts, the foods you eat, the behaviors you engage in, things of that nature, taking responsibility for it. This is not a knock on anybody who has clinical depression. What I'd like to offer are ideas that support people who recognize these bouts of depression in their lives and in others, that want a bit of perspective on it, and perhaps a solution or an idea that might support them in not only dealing with the depression while you're in it, knowing how to handle it, but also recognizing that it's probably one of the best things that could have ever happened to you. And I'm going to explain why. I'm going to use a few different... I'm going to read, essentially. I've got a few things. I don't do this very often. I'm going to read to you from two different ends of the thought spectrum. One is very poetic and religious, and the other will be very scientific and concrete, if you will, because even those words that are so-called scientific are also very abstract, if you will. And we talk about a lot of things we don't actually see in science. But either way, the reason why I do this is because I find that both science and religion can offer you perspectives, depending on what you're most receptive to, as to the realities of your depression, the natural cycles that you experience in life, and why it's not only why it's good for you to go through these cycles, because you will evolve, you grow. So the very first piece that I want to read is from Abdul Baha, and he's one of the founders of the Baha'i religion, faith. He goes on to say that the mind and spirit of man advance when he's tried by suffering. The more ground is plowed, the better the seed will grow, the better the harvest will be. Just as the plow furrows the earth deeply, purifying it of weeds and thistles, so suffering and tribulation free man from the petty affairs of the worldly life until he arrives at a state of complete detachment. His attitude in this world will be that of divine happiness. Man is, so to speak, unripe. The heat of fire of suffering will mature him. Look back to the past times, and you will find that the greatest men have suffered the most. There are other passages by Abdul Baha where he also uses the metaphor of fire and gold, where the purity of the gold is dependent on the heat of the fire. He also talks about a sailor who has seen very rough waters, being a far greater sailor than one that has always been on easy waters. Very poetic, very religious, very metaphorical. But the idea is that there are things that we recognize in nature and in our extrinsic world that point to the reality. For the ground to produce strong fruit, strong trees, it needs to be dug up really deep. You need that pain, you need that suffering, you need that digging, you need that turning, you need that turmoil to get rid of all the impurities that allow the seed to grow to its fullest potential. If you just drop it on untoiled ground, the seed won't grow, or it won't grow very well. You understand? So very poetic. I'll read now something from the other end of the spectrum that might be helpful to other people who see the world from a more scientific light. All machines, in fact, must eventually break down. And scientists have confirmed that The law describing this energy exchange in a machine applies to all energies in the universe. This fact of nature is often found and spoke of as the law of increasing entropy. Entropy, simply put, is the measure of an amount of randomness or chaos in a system. And the law of increasing entropy is an expression of the fact that the universe is increasingly moving toward a state of increased disorder and randomness. Left to itself, with no energy input from the outside, an energy system will tend to break down and become increasingly disordered. A car will turn to rust and fall apart. A mountain will eventually be worn down, and so on. Even the expansion of the universe itself is a movement in the direction of increasing disorder, increasing entropy. Yet we can plainly see that many things in the universe tend towards increased order. The opposite of what is predicted by the second law of thermodynamics is that life itself has evolved as atoms became molecules, then amino acids, proteins, cells, multicellular life, social systems, and so on. Definitely a process of increasing order. And obviously against the flow of increasing entropy. How can this be? This seeming paradox puzzled scientists for over 100 years until Prigogine discovered the key, that order arises not in spite of entropy, but because of it. Part of what he's describing or alluding to is to the fact that there are dissipative structures in the universe. There are dissipative or open systems where human beings, for example, are an open system or a dissipative structure where we take in energy and we discharge energy, right? One of those obvious examples of that is we eat food and we shit. We eat food, we shit. We inhale, we exhale, right? So we're a dissipative structure. We're taking in, we're dancing, we're an open system with the environment. We're not by ourselves, and the environment is not separate from us, right? So with that understanding that we're a dissipative structure, I want to go on. Oh, I even highlighted this. Prigogine called these open systems that evolve by taking in energy and matter from the environment and dissipating the resulting entropy into their environment, dissipative structures. So that's what we are. Now, dissipative structures flourish in unstable, fluctuating environments by being plastic enough to handle the variations in changes in such environments. The more ordered a complex system is, the more entropy it must dissipate in order to maintain its existence. Conversely, each system has an upper limit due to the level of its complexity, of how much entropy it can dissipate. This is a key point. If the fluctuations from the environment increase beyond that limit, the system, unable to disperse enough entropy into its environment, begins to internally become more entropic or chaotic, right? It can't handle it. You can't handle what's happening in your environment. The world is changing, people are changing, your girlfriend dumped you, you have a lot of financial stress. So this is happening to the open system. If the excessive fluctuations continue, the chaos eventually becomes so great that the system begins to break down until finally a point is reached where the slightest nudge can bring the whole system grinding to a halt. Breakdown, right? This point, which Prigogine called the bifurcation point. Bifurcate means to divide into two branches. A decision point, a moment of truth. Either the system will totally break down and cease to exist as an organized system, or it will spontaneously reorder itself in an entirely new way. Incredibly, this reorganization is non-causal and non-linear with what went before. It is in no way predictable from prior conditions. Only the probability of a certain outcome can be determined. The change is a true quantum leap, a death and a rebirth, and the main characteristic of the new system is that it has a capability to handle the fluctuations, the input from the environment, that cause the initial overwhelm and eventually breakdown of the old system. You break down and then you build up stronger. Do you see? This is what happens with open systems. Either it completely breaks down and it dies, right? Which most people think the depression leads to death to a degree. Or it grows stronger. It reorganizes at a higher level. In Prigogine's words, the system escapes to a higher order. Out of chaos comes a new order, a more evolved system. The new system has the stability and is able to move easily, easily exist in the previously overwhelming high fluctuation environment, but the fluctuations increase again to a level beyond the system's new and higher capability for dispersion of entropy. The process will repeat. This just keeps fucking happening, resulting in new internal chaos and other reorganization at a new and yet more evolved level. I fucking hate reading to the camera, but I thought this was important for you guys to hear. So you can see that the mystics and the philosophers, you see that the religions and the science all point to one reality when it comes to entropy, depression, frustration, anxiety, pain, disillusion. It's just a natural part of the process of becoming a stronger version of yourself. It happens to us spiritually, and it happens in the world physically. So my point here is to show you multiple different ways to see how depression is not only normal, it's essential, and be grateful for it because it allows you to reorder yourself at a higher level. Every time I experience a bout of depression, I come out on the other end a different person, doing different things. But it's because I'm aware of what's happening and I'm looking, I'm aware. I want to see the opportunities as they present themselves to me instead of falling into the depths of a spiral down depression because I'm personally identified with what is happening when I'm upset. And this is what I invite you to try and experience. Do not latch on to your depression. Do not personally identify with your depression. See it as you see winter, and winter always leads to spring and summer again. See it as you see nighttime. Nighttime becomes daytime again. See it as you see the breaking down and the building up of your body. Catabolic, anabolic. It is a process that's natural for spiritual evolution and physical evolution in the world. Okay, so I want to respond to a number of questions and inquiries I get on my Facebook wall, email, so on and so forth, about this idea of suicide. Apparently a lot of young dudes are thinking about suicide, at least considering it. The very first thing I want to offer you is empathy. I understand that the feeling is real. This idea that you want to just do an end, put an end to the entire game of life. So, beyond my empathy and my care for you, my heart going out to you, I want to offer you this, that there is a law. There's a law in nature which is that of seasons, right? So, let me give you an example of how silly the idea of suicide just might be. For example, in the wintertime it's cold, right? It's freezing fucking cold in the wintertime, especially if you live in like the north. And it could be so cold that you're miserable. If a man was so cold and miserable that he decided that perhaps I should kill myself because this freezing cold misery is not worth living in, someone might offer him the idea that, or remind him of the law that, dude, this is like, you got maybe another 6 weeks, you got maybe another 8 weeks, and then spring's coming, man. It's just the way it is. Things cycle through. It's just a season. Right now, I understand it's freezing cold and you feel horrible and you feel pretty bad about the situation, but hang in there because the heat's coming back. It's cyclical. It's just like that. And in the same way that you acknowledge and appreciate, respect the law of nature, of seasons, which dictates every winter will be followed by a spring and summer, realize that your feelings are the same way. I felt depressed. I felt miserable. I felt at times where it may be better to take my life. But with the wisdom that I've gathered in my 33 short years of life, I've come to realize that it's just a feeling. And in the same way that feeling cold is diminished, the misery of feeling cold is diminished by the insight that spring will come, is the same feeling that you should acknowledge, the same law that you should acknowledge, that no matter how miserable things are right now, it is just a season. It's going to pass. The problem, see here is where the problem is. Here's where you end up depressed.
and wanting to kill yourself, contemplating suicide for more than just a few months, is when you become personally identified with the feeling. When you become so miserable that you're attached to the cold, that when the heat comes, when the sun comes back, you're so focused on the cold that you don't even realize that the sun's coming out. You're so focused on the misery. You're so personally identified with the misery of depression that when the season is naturally changing, you resist it. You don't realize things are getting better. You don't allow yourself to move with the season, allow yourself to move with the rhythm of life because of your attachment to the depression. You've got to let go. The best place to be, the most resourceful position to take is that of a watcher. Right now you're depressed, that's real. Right now you're contemplating suicide, that's real. Watch it, leave it alone and watch it. Don't become emotionally attached to it. Don't play with it. Don't play with the idea. Watch it, just like you watch a cloud in the sky as it passes by. It's just a thought. It's just an idea. See it for what it is and remain detached. It will pass. Bottom line is this. Don't be like the man who kills himself in the winter because it's so cold, not realizing that spring is right around the corner.
Elliot. Working towards building my business, my career, I possess the same neurotic drive that you have right now. Mind you, this was 10 years ago for me. And I got everything I wanted. I was disgusted with anybody who wanted less. And I'd watch people older than me, with their businesses, and I see how they're all doing it wrong and they're miserable. And every ounce of my being was either pushing away from those types of people, which, like you said, were about 95% of them, and just creating this contrast between me and them. Because I'm a hard worker, I know what I want, I'm smart, I'm strong, I'm intelligent, and God damn it, I own my life. Right? You understand that attitude. Had no time for no one else. No time for anyone else. And the minute I got close enough to see what was going on beneath the facade of most people, I was disgusted. Needless to say, I had no friends. Sound familiar? Who needs them? I'm busy. I got shit to do. They're nothing but fucking anchors. There's a great quote in The Luck Factor by Brian Tracy that was really important to me. And he says that successful people seem as if they're alone a lot of times. But they're not aloners, really. They're loners. Meaning that successful people, truly successful people, and if you listen to Brian Tracy, he's got there's more to it than just achieving your goals when he says that. Successful people have this is another one of his quotes, no surface acquaintances, no casual acquaintances. Everybody in their life is significant and they belong there. Right? And I remember hearing this when I must have been about 23 years old, doing my thing and thinking, boy, where the fuck are these people? Where are these people that I can be a loner but share my life with? And of course I had my wife and I have brothers and stuff, but I wanted people that share the same goals as me, right? Loved life the way I did, wanted to lift weights, wanted to build businesses, right? The things that I was driving towards. And I even prayed for that type of person. And people came and people went. But what I didn't understand about the people that were coming, that I'm now starting to learn, mind you, 10 years later, and I'm giving you this foresight. I'm not telling you what to do, I'm telling you what you're going to experience most likely if you're like me. The acquaintances that I did make, and the people that I did grow in a relationship with, were means to an end. And I realized that I never developed really strong, heartfelt relationships with these people because I was surrounding myself with them simply because I saw how they could advance me. Do you see? And I know that you're thinking the same way. You want to talk to people that are doing the same thing you're doing and you help advance one another. It's an interesting thing that when you surround yourself with other people that are just like you in that way, they, more than likely, if they're not evolved,
will see you merely as a means to an end also. So here you have 95% of the people who can't relate to you anyway because they're off on totally different adventures, right? Those are adventures also. Getting hammered 3 days a week, sleeping, that's an adventure. They're off on totally different adventures. And then you find a small percentage who are just like you, but they never really love you, and you never really love them. You love what they can do for you. And the relationship works as long as you can keep scratching each other's backs, if you will. Okay? Bear with me, because I'm going to come full circle. I'm going to tell you how to surround yourself with people that are going to bring pleasure into your life. See, you don't have pleasure yet. Maybe you shouldn't, because you're still slaying dragons, like I talked about in that Friedrich Nietzsche video a couple weeks ago. You know, being a lion. You're still slaying dragons. Go and slay those fucking dragons. When you're slaying dragons, you don't have too much time for pleasure. But it's going to creep up on you. You're 23 years old. And you know what? You've accomplished more at 23 years old than most people accomplish by midlife. So you're going to grow wiser faster. Don't make this mistake, because most men in their 50s don't realize it until they're in their 50s. Hopefully you'll be like me and you'll figure this stuff out when you're in your early 30s. I feel like an old fucking man because I did so much so early, and you're on the same path. Okay, so slay your fucking dragons, be a badass, you know, you don't need anybody, but there's gonna come a time when you'll realize I'm alone. And I can have all the money in the world, and I can have all the success and all the wins in the world, you know, I can put up this entire facade, because really that's what it is in many ways also, you know, you're building up what you seem to look like. You know, I have nice things, I talk articulately, I'm smart, I'm strong, and I'll fuck you up in any way. You know, you see what I'm saying? So it's narcissistic. It's purely phallic. Your classic phallic narcissist. Like, takes one to know one. But you're going to get to a point where there's no pleasure in that. The next goal doesn't mean nearly as much as, I just want to hug. I just want to, like, laugh with a friend. I just want to sit down and enjoy a conversation with someone who isn't necessarily up to business right now. Why does it always have to be business? Why can't we talk about something, you know, just philosophy? I like to talk about philosophy. This is what I like to do, actually. When I sit down with my best friends, we have conversations like this. Just sit down and chat about life. Those people are in the 95% that you're disgusted by, I promise you. A lot of them are in there. And the reason why you can't see them is because you've built up such a stark contrast between who you are, because you need to, in order to slay some fucking dragons, and those other people. But those people who seem like they're just going with the flow or being comfortable, they've got something you don't. They're content. Okay? Unless they're complaining. Now, if they're complaining about their plight, then they're just they're losers. But you're going to find that there are people that, like, you know, I've got friends who've got regular 9 to 5 jobs, you know, like firemen and like UPS drivers. And I got one friend, he came here for a video the other day, and he worked out with me, and he hops from job to job. He's either laying tile or he's like doing mason work. Like, he's all over the place. The dude never complains, and he's always happy. We're completely diametrically opposed, except for when it comes to strongman, you know, but we can't talk about anything on any other level. And I love him. I love him because he lives a pleasurable life and shows me how to find pleasure in the things in my life. Believe it or not, there are times when I look at my life and I'm like, boy, I wish I could just chill out and relax, right? Doesn't Elliot Hulse's life look so like nice? Trust me, dude, that neurotic drive for more, that phallic narcissist attitude has to be tempered in me often. That's why I meditate. Compassion, generosity, loyalty, love, pleasure, joy, peace of mind, warmth are all found in that 95% that can't figure out how sharp, hard, focused, and strong we are. They don't need to be, and you don't need them to be like you. Do your work, appreciate others around you for who you are, and let them into your soft spots that you've been protecting with your hard driving attitude.
trust me, you'll live a more balanced life. And not only will you be a great achiever, but you'll know how to breathe and love as well. Good luck.